Right, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. I am live this morning, you'll be glad to hear. It's 179. It's Wednesday, the 13th of October. And in today's show, I just got a quick update on the first live Science of Being Seen presentation I've managed to do since February 2020. We'll look at Cake. They're providing some electric bikes for anti-poaching rangers. We'll ask, is there an ultra charging future for electric vehicles and why it may not be quite the solution that people are suggesting. We'll also go back in time and look at a blast from the past as a new Z650 RS is released, and Kawasaki and their affordable, accessible dual sport KLX 230S. Furygan, M&P have reduced their airbag price from £380 to £200, but we'll have a look at why. It might be that there is a catch in that price. Sudden misfire, if you've had experienced one over the last few days, maybe there is a problem with the fuel. And we'll finish off with today's talking point. A coroner blamed a fatal crash in New Zealand on a lack of signs, and we'll actually have a look at how signs should be put up and how much we can rely on them. So settle yourself down for the next few minutes while we go through the show. Don't forget, if you've got any questions that you want to ask, anything that you want to talk about, do drop me a line and I will be more than happy to include your comments. I've actually got a little bit of feedback by email the last couple of days, which is nice. So I will look at that actually in the next show, hopefully. All right. Okay. So on with what we're going to talk about today. Now, the first point of the day is last time I actually delivered a live Science of Being Seen presentation. It was actually an astonishing amount of time ago. It was actually February last year. And I was out doing my Science of Being Seen presentation at Rochester. It was in front of a live audience. It was for Kent Fire and Rescue as part of the Biker Down show. Brittany Morrow and her partner John, I think his name were over from the USA, and I invited them along as guests to see what Biker Down was all about. And it turned out it would be not just last Science of Being Seen presentation that I would do for 18 months in person. It also turned out to be the last time I would deliver SOBS for Biker Down. Now, during the lockdown, Biker Down went on hold across the country, but the fire services also got together and they decided to make a change to Module 3 of Biker Down. Sadly, nobody actually bothered to inform me in person, which was rather disappointing. So I discovered that Science of Being Seen was about to be replaced by a new module. Now, you know, in essence, I don't object to that. I mean, it's a fine, really, because one of the things that safety interventions need is that they actually have to be updated. They need to stay fresh. If they're not updated, they get stale. People think, oh, I've done that, and they don't think about doing it again. And one thing that you do need with first aid is actually you do need to keep refreshing it. So I have no problem with the change, but it would have been nice to have received a sort of a so long and thanks for all the fish letter, rather than discovering sort of through the grapevine, basically via an email from an insider, what was going on. Anyway, forwards and upwards, Science of Being Seen is carrying on regardless. I've bought a new domain, which is scienceofbeingseen.org, to make it easier for everybody to find. The Science of Being Seen website has been rearranged. I'm still working on that to make it easier to read, and I'm continuing to update it with new research as well. So it's all dynamic, it's all still going forward, it is all happening. On top of that, of course, you've probably noticed that I am offering Science of Being Seen presentations online every 2 months. And those are available to anybody who wants to find out more about the research that I've been doing. And the next will be in December. It'll be on the first Wednesday, so keep your eye open for that. I won't give the link is to these presentations is in the info blurb for the show. I've also been delivering Science of Being Seen regularly via Zoom to clubs and groups across the UK. Science of Being Seen also went out to a worldwide audience thanks to appearing on the US-based Rev Talks series with a lot of other interesting speakers. And of course, I also delivered it virtually to New Zealand this year as part of the Shiny Side Up event. And last but not least, in spring, it went out on the GB Powered Two-Wheeler Safety Week. But honestly, it was great to be back in front of real life people once more. So big shout out here for 7 Advanced Motorcyclists who organised last night's presentation. Thanks for the opportunity to come and talk to you. Thanks for the welcome, and thanks for the patience with the technical glitches. My computer, my laptop decided it would throw a wobbly after 18 months of sitting in a bag, presumably. Anyway, so if you do run a club or a group, don't forget, drop me a line and I'll be more than happy to come and organise a talk for you in person or online. All right, okay, so what else have we got for you? Well, rangers in Africa have been struggling for many years to deal with poaching, as you're probably well aware. The problem is that they tend to use petrol vehicles, Land Rovers, but also motorcycles, and that even the quietest of petrol engines can be heard some distance away, of course, in the silence of the bush. And by the time the rangers arrive, the poachers have usually vanished and left the unfortunate animals behind them. Now, Swedish manufacturer Cake, who I have talked about in recent episodes, have developed and delivered stealth electric motorcycles to the rangers. Let me get the picture up on screen. It should be coming up. There it is. Yes, that's the Cork AP. And it's a modified version of one of the bikes that they already produce. And it comes combined with a mobile solar charging station, and that comes from an outfit called Goal Zero. And what this means is that the bike can actually be operated deep in the bush, well away from the electrical grid. And their team leader, Mafana Zaba, he says that the petrol bikes we've used previously have all been loud, heavy and expensive to keep running in these areas. The Cake bikes are quiet, which makes it easier for us to approach poachers undetected. We hope this collaboration will result in more effective anti-poaching in our region, and we're really excited to start using the bikes in the wild. So these are effectively Cork OR models, which have been modified. Now, the modifications include drivetrain software. That has been changed to 3 ride modes. There is an Explore mode, which offers 28 mile/hour speed and a 3 to 4 hour endurance. There is an Excite mode, which makes it go faster, basically about 40 miles per hour, and that gives you something between 1 and 2 hours of range. And then there is an XL, maximum torque and speed, and that goes for around about an hour before the bike needs topping up. So presumably you can sort of use the acceleration to get on top of your problem, as it were, quickly at the end of a sort of stalking procedure. Anything else? The bike gets a revised lightweight frame. The suspension has been made more robust for dirt road and off-road use. The drive chain is now sealed, it says, although I'm not sure about that. Presumably possibly a sealed chain, I don't know. It looks wide out in the open to me, but hey ho. And where there were plastic components, they've now been changed for more robust composites. You also get a rear carrier, which allows medical equipment to be transported, and the bike comes with a much more powerful headlight for nighttime use. So Cake's founder and CEO, Stefan Itterborn, he says it's great to see that the first batch of cork APs has made it to Africa, ready to change the game when it comes to fighting poaching in the most threatened wildlife areas. With fast, quiet and solar power driven bikes, we increase our chance of countering poaching and can truly make an impact in the region. It's only the beginning. They'll continue to ship bikes to the wildlife trust out there to help with their anti-poaching work. So that's all good news there for electric motorcycles. Now, the holy grail of electric bikes really and electric cars is a combination of range and fast charging. So what are we talking about? Well, basically right now adding 80% battery capacity in 30 minutes is seen as pretty quick charging, but it is still a long way from a 2-minute fill up of a 50-litre petrol tank. You're not going to get as far, and it's certainly going to take you a lot longer. Now, heating issues seem to have been overcome with the rapid charging of batteries, but there is still a limit to how fast you can stuff energy into a lithium-ion battery before the battery itself starts to degrade. Now, there are various chemical problems which I won't go into, which causes the battery to basically fail if you try to charge them too fast. So what is likely to happen with the next generation of fast charging batteries? Well, I've been looking around at some of the latest news and what's going on, and one approach is the use of alternative anode materials. For instance, the UK-based startup Echion Technologies has developed a niobium anode that can be charged, according to the CEO Jean de la Verpillière, as fast as you want. And they say that their prototype EV battery cells can be charged in 6 minutes without impacting the safety or life of the battery. Now, that sounds good in principle, but predictably, there's a drawback, and that's the niobium. Batteries with niobium anodes store less energy per unit mass than conventional graphite ones. So basically, you need a bigger battery to go the same distance. And, there's a limit to how much battery you can put into a car without the battery starting to impinge seriously on other space. So right now, EV manufacturers are actually focusing on fast charging, on range rather, over fast charging. So they are looking at other markets for their batteries, such as grid storage and power tools, but they do see a time at which these batteries might actually filter down, particularly to fleet costs, where it's the downtime between charging batteries up that costs money. There's also another issue that Echion didn't mention, and that's getting hold of niobium in the first place. Now, it's actually a reasonably common element. It actually sits between lead and copper in terms of abundancy in the Earth's crust, but there's just one problem. It does not actually occur in very many mineral deposits. It's mostly widely dispersed. So in other words, you basically have to crush a lot of rock to get a little niobium. You don't find rich seams of the stuff sitting around ready to mine. And the production procedures to extract niobium are complex, and of course all that leads to a significant environmental impact as well as cost. So what else could be done? Well, another technology that offers some promise is solid state battery design. Now, in these batteries, the lithium ions actually flow through a solid electrolyte. It's usually a ceramic rather than a liquid one. Now, liquid electrolytes tend to be flammable, so the answer here is that the ceramic makes them safer, and it also opens up the ability to use different anode materials as well, which can also improve the way the battery works. So Solid Power, they are a company that's developing these solid state batteries with funding from BMW and Ford, are working on a silicone anode battery cell, and they say it can be charged halfway in 15 minutes, and they're targeting a 20-minute full recharge rate for a commercial version. So better than what we have at the moment, but still slower than petrol. But new research suggests that a prototype battery could be charged in just 3 minutes, whilst retaining more than 80% of its capacity after 10,000 cycles. Now, if you know anything about current EV batteries, they degrade by around 20% of their capacity, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 cycles. So if you are using a battery on a daily basis, you could get anything between 3 and 6 years use out of it before you start to lose a significant chunk of capacity. But remember, this is research, so don't get too excited. The battery they're currently working on is the size of a coin. So obviously it would need to be scaled up fairly significantly for vehicle use. And it would also have to be proven capable of mass production. But researchers believe that if everything goes right, they could actually solve those problems in about 5 years' time. But even if we do solve the fast charging issue, there's still one problem that remains, and that's the strain that is placed on the electrical grid itself. Now, on the one hand, charging up at home overnight when demand is lower should be more affordable, because basically what it means is that it means energy sources that would otherwise be used for powering what the things we do in the daytime can be kept on stream and used to power those EVs. But because it's done when demand is relatively low, it means that the grid operators don't have to switch on their backup power plants, which are often coal, gas, or oil powered, which are obviously dirty sources of energy. We can use wind energy, for example, at night. There've been very skeptical reports about wind energy in the press recently, about wind energy being produced when nobody needs it. Well, if we're charging EVs at night, it doesn't matter if it's dark, the wind keeps going, we can continue to charge up. On the other hand, the domestic power supply was never intended to recharge car batteries. Now, if you have an older home, this one was built in about 1895, the one I'm in at the moment, you'll know full well that they were never designed with electricity in mind. Certainly not with the kind of electrical demand that we place on the electrical system at the moment. Refrigerators, washing machines, TVs, even air conditioning. Any home built basically sort of much later than about 1990 probably needs rewiring to cope with a lot of that. I'm not an electrical expert, so don't quote me on those, but certainly 60s and 70s homes, rewiring is probably a good idea. So if you start adding EV batteries plug in to your domestic supply, you're going to add to those problems at a domestic level. Now, imagine every house in the street plugging in an EV to recharge it at night, and there are serious doubts over whether the street level infrastructure can cope, particularly if everybody has fast charge cars which actually charge up in 30 minutes or so. So there are arguments to suggest that, in fact, for overnight charging, the slow sort of 12-hour plug-in isn't actually such a bad thing, because it would reduce and spread load on the grid over a much longer period. So just possibly, and here's my speculation, maybe the answer is actually hybrid charging. So you have slow charging when your car or bike is plugged into your domestic supply to help with the grid infrastructure problems, but perhaps we also have batteries that are capable of fast charging when we plug in at the electrical equivalent of a filling station. So that would help minimize delays when we're traveling. So maybe there are ways of dealing with these problems, but they obviously need some extra thinking. Okay, so don't forget, you are watching Kevin Williams here with Elevenses. Survival Skills Rider Training is bringing you today's show with topical news, sometimes controversial views, and better biking tips as well. So if you've got comments, questions, do drop me a line. I will do my best to answer them on air. I will do my best to answer after the show if I can't talk about it online. Clive has looked in. Morning, Clive. And Martin is also here. Hello, Martin. Good to see you too. So I hope you guys are enjoying the show, and I hope a few more people look in later. We don't have many viewers this morning, but hey ho, I know that people do catch up later, which is nice. Right, okay, so what else to talk about? Well, another badly kept secret has been revealed. It's the retro Z650 RS. So let's take a look at the bike. There it is. although it's based on the familiar liquid called 649cc parallel twin that seems to have been around for eons in bikes like the ER6 and the Versys packages, the bike isn't that far removed in terms of performance from the machine it resembles, which was, of course, the 1976 Z650 inline 4. Now, that bike stayed in production until 1983, which actually was an age-long model run at the time when a lot of models came and went within a year or two. And of course, the old bike featured an air-cooled 8-valve double overhead cam motor. It pumped out around 64 horsepower, and that made it almost as quick as a lot of 750s at the time. And I have to say that it was a bike I eyed with some envy as it overtook me. I really did like the styling of that particular machine. Now, the new retro model pumps out a fairly respectable 67 horsepower and 47 foot-pounds of torque. Naturally enough, there are already naysayers dismissing the bike. Some are saying it's not a 4, and so they won't ride the twin. Others are saying it's not powerful enough. But the reality is it will still push the bike to around 120 miles an hour, which is enough to tear your head off on a naked. And with the right gearing, it should still accelerate fast enough at real road speeds to engage with most riders. The modern touches, it has all LED lighting, but the bike does actually pay some fairly serious homage to the classic machine's silhouette. If you can look beyond that twin port 2-into-1 exhaust and the trellis frame, which isn't exactly the original either. But the shape of the tank there, the side panels, the little ducktail fairing at the rear, and particularly the instruments, I think they're all quite pleasing to the eye, well, my eye anyway. And like the original, it will come in that sort of candy emerald green color scheme. You'll notice the wheels also sort of do a mimic job of spoked wheels quite nicely. The only thing that doesn't really look very realistic for the old bike is that sort of semi-underslung exhaust, but hey-ho, we can't have everything. Now, last year I looked at the new Tiger Sport, which on the spec sheet at least, the 650 offers some pretty serious performance with a reasonably modest price. But if you're not looking for faux adventure bike styling, because the Triumph is really a road bike with a fairing. If you're looking for a naked, straightforward 2-up machine, this one actually has a real passenger seat rather than just a sort of a little mini pad which pays homage to a rider and a passenger. This one really does have a passenger seat. It's a simple, straightforward looking 2-up bike, and it will set you back at 7,549 for the metallic Spark Black, or unfortunately a bit of a premium for the candy emerald green, or metallic moon dust grey and ebony. Where do they get these names from? 7,699, so another £150 for the fancy colour scheme. And the good news is we should see it in dealers in around a month's time. Okay, so don't forget, if you enjoy the show, you can head over to my Ko-fi page, /survival skills. Pop over there, you'll find hundreds of better biking articles. For the price of a coffee, you can open them all up to read. There's plenty of reading material over there, which doesn't cost you anything. So you can go and over there, check out what's on offer and see if you like what you read. And if you do, you can always buy me a cuppa. Meanwhile, another bike has appeared. Now, I don't have a picture of this one, I don't think, over the big pond, and that's the 2022 KLX 230S. Now, it's another bike that frankly harks back to earlier, simpler days when riders didn't think that having 100 horsepower at the back wheel was an essential feature of motorcycling. The machine is a lightweight dual sport. It's an update to a bike that's been around for a while, but we don't get it here in the UK, which is a little bit of a shame. For the update, the bike gets a revised lowered suspension. You lose a bit of travel at either end from the off-roader. The good news is that you get stiffer fork springs and a firmer spring at the rear. The bike actually comes with proper rising rate suspension, which is a little bit unusual for some budget bikes. You'll find that many budget bikes these days have been stripped down to less than less complicated suspension. They're basically straight push. So yeah, the seat height comes in at 885 millimeters or 32.7 inches, which is actually lower than that Triumph I was talking about the other day. What else do we know about the bike? Well, it looks as if it could have come straight out of the 1970s because it is a simple, very simple, straightforward, single cylinder, air-cooled motorcycle. The bore and stroke is 67 by 66, so it's a very, very slightly over square, almost square. It's a single overhead cam. It's 2 valves. Drives through a 6-speed transmission. Power output is a lowly 18 horsepower at 7,600 RPM. Torque of just 13 pounds-feet at 6,100 RPM. But with a bit of low gearing, you can at least make the most of that. And it does pump through a 6-speed gearbox. The relatively low 9.4 to 1 compression ratio should mean that you wouldn't need premium fuel for the bike. It only holds 2 US gallons or 7.4 litres, but with a bit of luck, you should still see sort of, I would hope, 80 odd mpg out of that. So with a bit of luck, you should still get way over 125 miles on a tank full of fuel. And the best news is that the non-ABS model is $4,799 or $5,099 if you want ABS. I'll leave you to do the conversion into pounds, but I think it's a bit of a shame that we don't see bikes like that on the road here. Right, okay. What else to say? Right, okay, yes. Something I picked up over a couple of days ago. Whilst I was browsing my bike forums online, somebody said they'd just gone out for a 15-minute ride, put some premium fuel in, stopped at a destination, picked someone up, and they found it difficult to restart the bike. It wants to spark into life, but doesn't. Third time lucky, they said it started, but riding home, it has excessive popping from the exhaust. Motor runs fine under acceleration. Why would that be? Well, there are all sorts of suggestions from lambda sensors to spark plugs, but my guess is that with filling stations all over the country running out, and we've still got very low stocks here. Coming back last night from Gloucester, we got some fuel in Gloucester, but there were quite a few petrol stations around the area here which didn't have any. My guess is that if you filled up from a cistern that was nearly empty, you probably got water in the fuel. Forget E10 as a problem. Many people were saying, "Oh, it's the E10 fuel." No, I don't think it is, and it certainly wouldn't be running perfectly one moment and not running the next moment, particularly when the rider said they put premium fuel in. The fact that it suddenly went wrong just after filling up with petrol suggests to me that it is almost certainly water in the fuel. So my suggestion is, if you have suddenly developed a misfire like that, drain the tank, refill with fresh fuel, and see if that cures it. With a bit of luck, it will do. I had a problem with a leaky filler cap actually on one bike. And I found about half a pint of water sloshing around in the petrol tank, and draining that and the float bowls on that car model cured the problem, as did once I'd replaced the seal, that was. Okay, so carrying on, one of the latest things I don't need or want special offer emails from M&P dropped through my letterbox a couple of days ago with a headline telling me I could save big by introducing airbag technology under my Furygan jackets with the Fury airbag system. I was told it's proven high performance, easy to use technology, and inserts into a connectable vest developed by Furygan, maximizing protection and delivering unparalleled comfort. Of course, there is a hitch. You probably guessed what it is. You have to have the compatible clothing. It only works with the jacket from Furygan. So if you're not already an owner, you need to buy that so that the system to fit it into. And well, actually, when you read the small print, you discover that's only the first of two hitches. The second one is that having bought the jacket, then the airbag gilet, and then you have to sign up for a subscription to the software to actually get the device to work. And this turns out to be more expensive than you might expect. There you go. £120 a year, or £399 if you want to buy it outright. And costs don't just stop there either. If you do any adventure riding, and that might take you off tarmac and onto gravel roads, then you need to add another £25 per year to change the detection mode to be able to switch to off-road riding. Maybe you prefer to get your thrills on the track. In that case, if you want your jacket to go off at track speeds, then you need 2 more detection modes, and they will set you back another £25 for each 12 months. So maybe all those extra costs are putting people off, and just maybe that's why M&P have slashed the cost of the airbag in the first place. Right, okay. So, all right, on to the final item for the day. Today's discussion point. Every now and again, I see a news report on a bike crash that actually surprises me. I reported on one some months ago about a rider who was cleared in a charge of causing death by dangerous driving when somebody actually did the maths and realized that from the point at which the pedestrian stepped in front of him, the rider actually had no chance of actually hitting the brakes to avoid the pedestrian. In this case, the report was on a fatal crash where a motorcyclist died, sadly, and it referred to the coroner's report on the incident, and it occurred on a motorcycle trip in the Cape Reinga area of New Zealand back in 2018. 34-year-old Ben Petrie was riding with friends when he lost control of his motorcycle and he collided with an oncoming car. And he died at the scene from severe head and neck injuries, rather sadly. Now, we're all too familiar with results of investigations into collisions like this that hold the motorcyclists responsible. Very often, the explanation is all too familiar, it's riding too fast. But in this case, I was actually genuinely surprised to see that the coroner concluded this accident was not Ben's fault. It could have been prevented. And he laid the blame on missing road signage. Now, the coroner's investigation, along with a review by Opus Fulton Hogan, they found that the road had several faults that could have prevented his death had they been fixed. And they said that his speed had no bearing on the crash. Now, he was with 2 friends on the day he died who were riding not far behind him. And what seems to have happened is that Petrie reached a blind corner, but it had no warning. There were no warning signs known as chevron boards. In the UK, these are the black and white arrow boards that are placed on the awkward bits of corners. In the New Zealand, they are yellow and black. And the idea is that they warn drivers that there is a deviation at that point. That's where basically where the bend gets awkward. And there wasn't one. There are also road defects at the area that contributed to the crash. Now, when the coroner investigated further, he found 3 other reported motorcycle crashes in the same region between 2013 and 2017. And his conclusion was that road signs should have been in place to warn drivers and riders of upcoming curves on this road in Tapaki. Since that fatal crash, Waka Takahi has actually, I've just pronounced that wrong, Waka Kotahi has made the necessary changes in the area. They have installed what was seen as by the coroner as necessary signage. The coroner said, I expressed my concern that the obvious danger presented by the rise of the road and demonstrated by previous known crashes was not addressed by Waka Kotahi prior to Ben's death. Chevron signage would have been a simple, low-cost and obvious remedy to address the risk that was created by the road topography. If such signage had been in place, Ben's accident and subsequent death would likely not have happened. There's no consolation for the rider, his family or his friends, of course. According to Waka Kotahi National Manager System Designer Robin Elston, there's more work to be done to fix the road, including removing a small tree and also undergoing what he calls a full geometric design investigation of the curve in question, and they have applied for such funding. So one of my comments on that, well, really, getting consistency in signing is absolutely crucial, and it is good to see that this crash wasn't simply put down to riding too fast for the conditions or the road, as would often happen in this case. Now, generally speaking, I do find that here in the UK, if there are signs in place, there are worth paying attention to. But as I've said many times, it's essential that riders do understand how signs and road markings operate. Now, years and years ago, I was running a course up in Yorkshire, and we approached a bend very similar to this over a blind crest with a very sharp corner on the far side of it and a very significant drop just over the blind crest. Now, I actually was using this road to explain why it is that we need to see, and then more importantly, actually react to road signs. It's the kind of road where it'd be very, very easy indeed to go over the crest at high speed, because the bit of road in front of it is something like about half a mile of dead straight road. So I pulled up, pointed out the road sign to my trainee and suggested that they went into it rather more slowly than the road prior to that had allowed. And, when we went over the crest and we talked about the bend later, he said, I would have gone over that crest far too fast. I would have been in big trouble because I simply wouldn't have seen that sign had you not told me to look for it. Similarly, I was actually on a group ride years ago out in the south of France. And I was following another rider who was I don't know. I think he knew I was an advanced instructor, I think, and I think he was overriding, trying to impress me. And we came up to a very similar problem, blind crest with a big sign saying bends on the far side of it. He went flying over the crest, and I went round the corner. I last saw him trailing barbed wire from the forks of his BMW as he turned the bike around in the field on the far side of it. He was very lucky because there was a river just at the other side of the field. He very nearly took a dip. As I say, it is important to understand how these signs work. I do have a very big book on highway design. It's in essence, it's the de facto European standard for road design. And one of the things it says on the first page is a road should be capable of being read like a book. But the trouble is, for all the emphasis on signs and markings in the highway code and in the theory test, we kind of learn what they mean by rote. Show me the sign, I'll tell you what it means. But we don't learn how to interpret those signs in terms of the problems that they pose to us actually on the road. And one of the problems that I will say is a genuine one is that the highway engineer is usually signing the road as it could be ridden or driven, rather than how the law technically allows us to ride it or drive it. Now, this can lead to a situation where we're on a stretch of road with a 50 limit on it, say, and there are lovely sweeping bends that could be taken at much higher speeds. And so what comes along is a road sign, and we think, why is that there? I can get around this bend at 50 with absolutely no problem at all. So what we tend to do is we tend to lose faith in the road signs, but it's not there for us tooling along at 50 at the speed limit. It's actually there for the rider or driver who is actually riding the road or driving the road in the way that it could be ridden if they ignored the speed limit. And then that bend warning sign will suddenly make sense at the higher speed. Similarly, people tell me I don't need junction warning signs, I can see the junction. I had that from an advanced rider actually not many years ago. And I was showing him a junction warning sign. He was saying, but the junction's there, I can see it. Why do I need the road sign? I can just look for the junction. Well, the answer again is that not every time is your visibility going to be as perfect as it was on that day we were looking at that junction? We may be following another vehicle, in which case we won't see the junction around it. The visibility itself could be significantly reduced. Perhaps we're riding at night. Maybe there are vehicles coming towards us, particularly if there's a bit of a blind crest. We'll be dazzled by those lights, and suddenly the road signs become very helpful. What about on days when visibility is reduced through spray or rain, or in areas where fog is common? So those road signs are not only there to help us understand hazards where they are, but we also have to interpret them in terms of why we shouldn't simply ignore them. Even if they don't seem to be giving us any useful information for the hazard ahead, think about the next hazard and you may not have quite such an easier time. So in short, next time you actually go out on the bike, have a look at the road signs and ask yourself if you really know why those road signs are there. Bend warning signs in particular, they flag up the warning of a hazard ahead. They will tell you that there is a significant bend that's caught people out in the past coming up. But look at the placement of the chevrons. When you do see chevrons, what they tell you is where people crash. If the sign says bend ahead where you might crash, chevrons say crash here. When you interpret bend warning signs in that way, suddenly they make sense. Similarly, once you start watching out for junction warning signs and interpret them in terms of it'll be a junction where people don't see vehicles coming, they suddenly make a lot more sense. Now, don't forget though, if the presence of a sign almost always means a hazard that we should treat with some caution, the absence of a sign never means there is no hazard. So we do need to use all our other skills and awareness to read the road on top of what we see in road signs. But none of that means ignore road signs when you do see them. Right, okay, that is it for today. Just before I go, don't forget the next webcast is scheduled for Wednesday, the 3rd of November at 8 p.m. It is called Breaking the Circle, and it will look at the technique of braking in corners. Don't forget, it will be there, come back. I was trying to put the post in. Let's try and get that in. There we go. That's what we're looking for. It's the link to the next webcast, Wednesday, the 3rd of November at 8 p.m. Right, so that is it from me today. Thank you very much again for looking in. I do hope you have enjoyed the show. Don't forget, share the show with friends and family. Do comment if you've got anything to say. I'm always interested in feedback on these shows. If you've anything you'd like me to look at in a future show, that's all good too. I'm more than happy to do that. And so finally, last thing to say, if you're out there on your bike today, do ride safe and enjoy your ride today. And I've forgotten to set my outro up, so it's almost here. So yeah, be out, enjoy the weather. It looks like it's a great day today. I'm going to go and fix a puncture, which I will tell you about more next time round. Right, that's it for today. Off I go. Bye now.